Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Praxis. Praxis is the future of education, a real-world, self-directed education where you learn how to create value and learn real skills in the workplace. Praxis is a 3-month boot camp followed by a 6-month apprenticeship and an amazing community of young, inspiring people. A former guest on this show, Olivia Van Wormer, is actually a current Praxis participant. She's in month 4 of the program and has recently moved from Colorado out to San Francisco to start her apprenticeship. We reached out to Olivia and asked her what type of people should apply for Praxis. Who or what type of person do you think should consider applying for Praxis?
Anyone who feels that there's like this itch when you think about, doing the normal thing, going the college route, or you're in college and you just feel like this slight itch that it's not quite right. Like there's something that is more that can push you to be better. I'd say anyone who has that understanding or who has felt like, they could do more, that they can make more, that they can be more than they are at that exact moment. I think anyone like that is a perfect candidate.
So if you've felt that same itch, if you've thought there must be something more than this conventional education, there must be something more than this conventional career, go to discoverpraxis.com, schedule a call, and find out if the program is right for you. This episode is also brought to you by italki.com. If learning a language is on your New Year's resolution sheet, italki.com is definitely the place you need to go. You can go to theworldwanderers.com/italki. There is a 2-for-1 promo. You can connect with a native speaking teacher from all over the world in whatever language you're trying to learn. They have very affordable rates and very customized experiences to however you learn best. italki is an amazing service. Amanda and I have both used it for Spanish, and I've recently used it for Thai. So definitely go check it out. We are very excited to be joined on the podcast today by Eddie Young from rebornstronger.com. Eddie has a really inspiring story of overcoming adversity, moving abroad, living in places like Japan, Korea, and the Middle East, traveling all over the world, and accomplishing some great feats like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro recently, and setting his sights on becoming the first African-American man to climb the highest 7 peaks on all 7 continents. We get into a ton of stuff in the interview, from his experiences living in Asia, living in the Middle East, some of his favorite travel destinations, and overcoming a broken neck and getting back to full physical health. There's something in this interview for everybody, so I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So let's get started. Here's Eddie Young. All right, we are very excited to be joined on the podcast today by Eddie Young. We met in the Philippines just a couple months ago, and Eddie is I think you're a candidate for maybe the new most interesting man in the world, because we just would start talking to you and you'd just kind of nonchalantly bring up things like, oh yeah, I just climbed Kilimanjaro, or like I used to live in Japan, or like all these like small facts that just kind of like slowly start drawing out of you, and just like so interesting and so varied in your experiences. You're in Saudi Arabia right now. But the place we thought would be good to start would be, how did you first get interested in travel? What was your first kind of going abroad experience?
Well, my very first going abroad experience, I don't think I would count, because I went to your mother country, Canada, to visit Niagara Falls with my family when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And I really don't remember much of that, other than we drove, and it didn't take very long. We drove up through Detroit. But for me, that was just like going anywhere else in America. The real instance that opened my eyes to the world, I say, would be my freshman year of college. I was in a travel study program with my university, and after our spring semester, we took a trip to Egypt. And we spent, I think, a few weeks there. We traveled to Upper and Lower Egypt. I got to see the pyramids. I went to Luxor, Cairo, Alexandria. And that was the moment, that aha moment, when I was like, all right, this world is pretty cool. I think I want to see more of it.
Cool. That's awesome.
What do you think it was? Like, was there anything specific about it? Was it just like the excitement of being somewhere that was so different?
Oh man, it was so much. It was, well, first it was a great group I went with. I went with a multicultural group from my university, and so we had a really strong bond that we developed throughout the whole semester. And then when we got over there to walk through the markets and have the people talk to us and say, "Welcome, brother, welcome home," and it just felt like it touched me inside. Felt like something I'd never really experienced before. And we met this little kid named Muhammad who was running his own perfume shop in one of the nearby markets when we were in Cairo. And this little kid was about 10 years old and fluent in 5 or 6 languages, probably had never been to school in his life. And there he was managing a shop all to himself. And just the fact that these type of things are going on in the world, it really showed me the difference in the way people live, just comparing America to Egypt.
Yeah, that's something that struck me when I first went abroad as well. Is the first time where I was like, oh, I could do something different with my life. Like people all over the world don't do the same thing that is kind of like my bubble that I was brought up with, thinking that that's what you did with your life.
Right. Like we all grow up and we go to school for 8 hours a day, and then we're programmed to believe that you need to get an office job and work 9 or 8 hours a day for 30 years and retire and stay in the same hometown and have your kids go to the same school that you went to and same high school. But that's not really life. I mean, life is getting out and experiencing the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we could both agree with that for sure.
Yeah. It'd be kind of ironic if we did it. We're just like traveling.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Just want to be back in Penticton. Had you thought about living abroad at that point, or was it kind of that trip where you started thinking like, I could see myself?
You know what? At that point, I still didn't think I would ever live abroad. Probably throughout college, I thought I was going to play professional sports of some sort, like NFL or MLB. So like that's the main reason I went to college in the first place. So I hadn't thought about living abroad at that point in my life, but I had a much stronger interest in languages, and I had a much stronger interest in traveling abroad. And I think that lit the fire initially.
Okay. And then so you came back to the U.S. after that, and you continued to play professional sports or college level sports, sorry. And then what was sort of the path after that kind of got you to where you are today?
Well, I went through college and I continued to play sports. My college career, it didn't really pan out how I would have liked it to. Had a lot of injuries, which held me back a lot. And then losing my mom during my sophomore year of college was a big blow to me. I dropped out of school for a while. I was a little lost and didn't really know if I would continue school or what I would do with life at that point even. But I got back in school because I figured that's what my mom would want. And ironically, the semester after I went back, I made the dean's list, made straight A's because I figured if my mom was here, she would say to me, don't sulk, don't just waste your life away, get back in school and be the best you can. So that was my attitude after that. And then once I graduated from college, I was still highly interested in sports and training myself and getting into sports in some way, maybe starting from the farm leagues with baseball or maybe starting with just a few tryouts and getting an agent for football. But I broke my neck when I was 22. And after breaking my neck, I didn't know if I would walk again. I didn't know if I would even survive surgery. And thankfully I did. But
so what actually, like, what was like the incident or like the moment like when that happened?
Well, I was kind of horsing around and wrestling, and I came down on my head at an angle, and it was a weird incident. It was really weird because you never think from a fall that your neck is broke. Like, I'm sure people have fallen countless times and gotten up and their neck wasn't broke.
Hmm.
I grew up thinking if you broke your neck, you were dead.
Yeah.
So for me, I pushed myself up. I think I blacked out for maybe a split second or two, but I pushed myself up and I went home and I told myself, all right, maybe it's just a sprain. Let me try to sleep it off or something. And so
At that point, you just had like bad neck pain and.
at that point I couldn't turn my head at all, which is a good thing I didn't force myself too hard because it probably would have killed me or left me paralyzed.
Yeah.
But I still thought it was a sprain. I think I kind of was trying to convince myself more than anything. I knew it was more serious, but I was really, really trying to convince myself that it was just a sprain. I was a recent college grad. I wasn't working. Like I said, I was just working out, and I didn't have a job, so I didn't, the insurance situation in America. I didn't want to go to the hospital if I didn't have to, basically.
Hmm.
But I drove myself home with a broken neck.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And I tried to lay down and sleep, but that wasn't happening. As soon as I laid down, I realized, okay, it's not just a sprain because it hurt so bad I couldn't even close my eyes at that point. And then I couldn't even get up. So I'm just sitting there on my bed stuck, and I'm rocking back and forth until I could sway myself out on my own because I was home alone. And finally, after I spent minutes and minutes and minutes rocking back and forth myself over on my side, I pushed myself off the bed, walked downstairs, sat on the couch, waited for Dad to get home. All I remember about that day was some time to pass before I actually said to my dad, all right, I think we need to go to the hospital. I know we watched part of a Laker game. I can remember that. And I remember we watched part of Kill Bill. I don't remember if it was one or two, but we watched that too. And
Just like passing time before you go to the hospital to find out if your neck's broken.
pretty much. And then finally we left and got to the hospital, and after they took the X-rays, it showed that my C4, C7 were completely fractured, and that's the danger zone. They say C2 through 5 stay alive. Anything else, your chances are slim. So I was in that region where it could have been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah. And what was that moment like for you when you get this news where they have to do surgery on your neck and it's kind of in a dangerous zone and you don't even know if you can come away with this?
Well, it's funny because before they even told me, it felt like the entire hospital staff was in my room. They immobilized me. They strapped me down, like you see players getting strapped down on a field after a bad fall. So I knew from that point, okay, this is serious. And then I don't really remember what was said because I was so heavily drugged by the time they gave me the news. But I remember my father being in the room. I remember a lot of hospital staff being in the room. And there was something along the lines of they didn't have anyone qualified enough to perform the procedure at the hospital we went to. I was going to have to be emergency evac to another hospital where I would have emergency surgery. Wow. Was the only option. And for me, it's like, well, if it's the only option, it's the only option. Let's get it done. I mean, I couldn't really get up and walk away. So I
Yeah.
didn't think too much of it.
Right. Yeah. And then so you do the surgery, you come out. What was the road to recovery like?
Uh, well, I'd say the mental recovery took a lot longer than the physical. Like it took me years before I would even talk about breaking my neck. And then it took probably about a year and a half before I started exercising again.
Wow.
So it was hard. It was hard. I call that my lost summer,
Yeah.
my lost spring and summer, because that year I really just stayed home the entire time I was recovering. So it was long and it was hard. It's important to just stay positive and stay focused on the end goal, which was a complete recovery.
And was your like goal for the complete recovery to be able to play sports again, or was it just to be able to walk and exercise and just kind of have like your regular day-to-day life back again?
Well, I had in the back of my mind that would possibly play sports again, but the first step towards getting there was just to be able to move my neck normally. So I really just took it step by step. I wanted to be able to move my neck normally. Then I wanted to be able to walk and get around on my own. And then from there, maybe I'll be able to start exercising again. And after that, I'll start thinking about the next steps.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You are welcome. No problem. I went through it, so I feel like it's my duty to share it now. You know, for a long time I was hesitant because I felt like it wasn't worthy of being told. But I feel like at this point in my life, it is, because it's something that not many people will ever experience. But people can relate to it because everyone goes through something hard in their life that they have to overcome. And it's all about just overcoming things that you think will pull you down or slow you down in life.
Yeah.
So the name of your blog or your website now is Reborn Stronger.
Right.
When did you like start to see that as kind of like, I guess you're kind of referring to it as like a rebirth. Like when did you kind of start seeing it like that?
Well, I really felt like I was reborn stronger. Obviously, it's going back to the neck incident because that took a lot out of me. You know, just going back to the very first days after surgery when my only exercise consisted of sitting up and sitting back down in the hospital bed for days on end. So it was a total rebirth, and I really felt the rebirth probably after I moved abroad to live for the first time, which was 2005 when I went to Japan, and I started exercising once I got over there. And I really feel like Japan is part of what healed me. I'm forever indebted to my time there, to the healthy lifestyle that I was able to live there, and the fact that I was able to have the confidence to get back into exercising and to run every day and to get myself back into shape. And I saw myself go from a point where just 2 years prior, I was laid up in a hospital bed, not knowing whether I would live or survive, to running and lifting and being in probably the peak shape of my life, the best physical condition that I've ever been in. So that's when I first felt it. And it's pretty much stayed with me since then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something that I thought was really interesting when I first met you is like, you're clearly very physically fit. Like you're a big dude, you're jacked. And I mean, you should never just judge a book by its cover. It's a pretty good example of that. But when, I heard that you had broken your neck, I'm like, what? Like if you don't know somebody who's gone through that, or you don't know that process, you just think like maybe that's something that you live with forever. And maybe some people do, but I think that it's really amazing if you look at yourself now and how physically fit you are to know that you overcame that obstacle.
And see, I'm my hardest critic right now. I feel like I'm out of shape. I'm trying to get back in shape, actually. But thank you for that compliment.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll take
it. Was it your injury and your recovery that kind of like spurred you to want to live in Japan?
Well, no. Ironically, no. I was drawn to Japan before the injury. During college, I really wanted to take a Japanese language course, but it was always scheduled to take place during time where I either had practice or I had some other athletic-related commitment. So I was unable to. But after the injury, I talked to one of my mentors, which was a professor I had in college, and she recommended that I speak to someone from the Asian languages department. And he referred me to the JET program, the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. And through that is how I got to Japan. So it was a place I had wanted to go long before the injury, but the injury presented me with that opportunity.
Right. It's so interesting to look back on something and to see how something good can come out of something bad. Like now you've traveled the world so much, you have this amazing website, you have all these aspiring goals, which we're going to talk about shortly. But to know that you know, that kind of came from this really dark point in your life when you were not even sure if you'd walk again.
Right. Yeah, and I think any situation can be turned into a positive as long as we have that type of mentality. There's no such thing really as failure. I hear a lot of entrepreneurs say, failure is what made them succeed, and I think that relates to all aspects of life.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that for sure.
So what was like day-to-day life like living in Japan as an American?
Oh man, well, for me, got a lot of stairs. I was in a small town, and I was probably one of the first black people that ever stepped foot in that town for a lot of the kids in the town. And it's funny, I remember one specific instance where I went to an elementary school, and I was introducing myself to the kids, and the teacher asked, "Okay, where do you think Eddie Sensei is from?" And the kids were like, And then one student's like, "China." And then another student, China. And then everybody's like, "Yes, he's from China." And it was because the only other foreigners they'd ever met were from China. So they just associated foreign with China. So
that's so good.
I stood out, but I loved it. I was able to really become a part of the community I lived in. I was able to start working out, like I said, and I was able to play ball again, which I never thought I'd do.
That's really cool. And so were you teaching English, or what was the teaching opportunity that you were doing there?
Yeah, I was teaching English. It was, like I said, it was a JET program. I was an assistant language teacher.
Okay.
And I was teaching in the whole, pretty much district where I lived in. It was a small town, probably of less than 10,000. But it was a real nice, quiet area. It was a rural area, but it was on the coast. So we had the Sea of Japan on one side, and we had Mount Dyson, which was like the Fuji of the West, on the other side, both like within proximity where I lived. So I had kind of the best of the mountains and the sea.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Was it? It sounds like a really good spot to like motivate you to get on top of learning Japanese. Was that kind of the experience where it's like not many people spoke English and you really had to focus in on learning?
Well, for me, I never formally studied Japanese. I picked up a lot just from being the only foreigner in town. And I got to a level where I was pretty conversational. So I knew baseball related Japanese like at the time, and I knew things to get around. But I never formally studied it, which ironically was what ended up motivating me to really study Korean once I moved to Korea and push myself to become fluent in that language, because I saw my 3 years in Japan as a missed opportunity to become fluent in Japanese.
Okay. And what took you over to Korea? Did you go straight from Japan, or was there time spent back in the U.S. first?
Well, if you want to know the truth, Mud Festival took me over to Korea. Basically,
What is Mud
Mud
Festival?
Festival.
I'll explain. So during my last year in Japan, I had met a friend who was living in Korea, and she invited me and another friend to come visit. I hadn't been to Korea in my 2 years in Japan, so I was like, sure, why not? It's probably just like Japan, but what the heck? I'll go give it a weekend. But we went, and I just fell in love with it. I felt like it was so much different. The food, the first time I ate Korean food, I was like, wow, it's so much flavor. It's bursting with flavor. And it was like a flavor explosion in my mouth. And it was cheap. And I was comparing it to the price that I pay for food in Japan as opposed to Korea. And I'm like, man, this is like Japan light, but the better version. Like, I don't know how to really compare it, but it was just one great weekend that made me decide, okay, that's where I'm living next.
And
then so Mudfest.
yeah, what's Mudfest?
Oh, and Mudfest, they have like this Mud Festival every summer. It's an annual event on Daecheon Beach. I'll admit it is very targeted to tourists, but it was a lot of fun. Like, you go there, and the mud is supposed to have like some good qualities for your skin, maybe similar to like the Dead Sea mud that you see people rub all over their body. So basically, you go there, you get muddy, you party, and you enjoy the weekend.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, for a 24, 5 or 6 year old dude, it's real fun.
Yeah.
And then so you went back to Japan and started thinking like, okay, how can I make a move over to Korea?
Yeah. I went to Japan and I started mapping out that master plan to get to Korea.
And what did that look like?
It was hard. It was hard because I had been playing baseball, and I had gotten a couple letters from some big name teams in Japan. I still have the letters somewhere at home probably. I got a letter from the Hiroshima Carp and the Chiba Marines, which are like 2 of Japan's major teams, and they wanted more video of me playing, possibly, which could lead to a tryout. But I walked away from that too. I wanted, and my whole reasoning was I wanted to leave Japan on the top of the mountain, like at the highest point, and move on to something next, another experience, and conquer like another country, so to say. So I didn't pursue those, and I stepped into something new, which was Korea.
And what did you do while you were in Korea? Were you doing language teaching again?
I was. I started out at a high school. Then I took a year to study Korean. And my final 2 years there, I was teaching at a university.
Wow. Yeah, that was another thing that, like Ryan said at the beginning, how we kept learning pieces about you in our weekend in Manila. And that was one of them where you're like, oh, like I speak fluent Korean, like I can write in Korean as well. And I was like, what? Who are you? I was like, this guy is cool. Was that, I mean, that's a whole different alphabet. Like it's completely different. Do you feel pretty proud of yourself for being able to speak that fluently?
I mean, I do. It's not that hard though. It's Hangul is an easy alphabet to learn and to write. And the language itself is not that difficult. What really helped me was my knowledge of Japanese because it's the same grammar structure. Some of the words are even similar, a few, but the grammar structure, knowing that grammar structure really helped me when it came time to learn Korean because I was more comfortable. I feel like if I would have studied Korean first and then moved to Japan, it would have worked the same way. Learning Japanese would have been so much easier. So, like you said, sometimes things in life set us up for what's going to happen next, and Japan kind of set me up for learning Korean.
What was the reaction back home like when you? Because I think it's kind of an experience a lot of travelers have, where like for us, maybe it was doing our first trip, and then we tell our parents and peers like, oh yeah, we're going traveling again, and they're like, what? I thought that was just like a thing that was going to happen, and then you were going to come home and everything was going to go back to normal. And I imagine it would kind of be like that for Japan, for you maybe, where it's like, okay, it's been 3 years in Japan, he's leaving, maybe he'll come back home. But what were people thinking when you're like, oh yeah, I'm actually going to Korea, I'm going to go there for a couple years?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like people were like looking at me like I'm crazy because they're like, you've been gone long enough.
Yeah, you're supposed to come home now.
Get a real job. Like, I'm like, what's a real job? Like, I'm making money, I'm traveling. I think that's equivalent to having a job, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, it was hard, especially family, for them to wrap their head around me being abroad and being away. And it was some objection. I feel like my sisters really wanted me to come home. But at the same time, once you have that passion, that desire for travel and you experience life abroad, it changes you in a sense. And you see the world differently and you want to experience more of that.
Definitely. Yeah, we can relate to that for sure.
What do you think you were getting out of living in Asia that was different than life would have been if you were in Indiana or the U.S. in general?
Well, I feel like there was less pressure, if that makes any sense. And the pressure to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. It seems like that it's a rat race back home, trying to outdo the next person. And that combined with a lot of jobs not giving adequate, and I'm speaking about America, not giving adequate time off to travel, 10 days, 2 weeks. Once you get used to being able to travel for like 2 or 3 months out of a year, you can't really go back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an experience that we've had as well, and it's tough too when you get 10 days, which is 2 working weeks, and then you have, you take half of those for Christmas. That leaves 1 week for
right.
11 and a half other months in a year, and it just becomes so unfulfilling not being able to do the things you want to do.
Right.
Yeah, and we can both definitely relate to that feeling. I kind of feel like it's almost like freedom, or like you get this space when you leave home, and you like change as a person. And then like our experience was we went away for 6 months and kind of started to have this change. And when you separate yourself from your social circle, you kind of start thinking about all these different things you want out of life. And then we came home and went right back into it and kind of lost all that.
Right.
We wanted to do. And
I think it pulls you in. When you go back home, it kind of pulls you in. It pulls you down that dark hole that you climbed your way out of once you left.
Yeah. And so the second time we went, we knew like, okay, if we want to be the people who we want to become, like we've got to kind of go somewhere new. Like we can't go back, or else all that kind of like unconscious force is going to be pulling us into the people we used to be. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, so you haven't lived in the U.S. since you moved over to Japan, is that right?
No, I did. I tried to assimilate back late 2012 until about early 2014.
Okay.
But it was hard. It was hard readjusting. Went through a rough year, and finally decided that my best move was to get back abroad.
Right. And is that when life took you to Saudi Arabia?
Actually, I was in Oman for a year before I went to Saudi Arabia, and I was in Oman working as a instructor at a university there, and then I found out about this opportunity here in Saudi Arabia from a friend. And most people, if they have a friend, call them and say, "Hey, want to come work in Saudi Arabia?" They'll probably look at them like they're crazy. But for me, I was like, when will I ever have a chance to go to Saudi Arabia again? Yes, I would like to come to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, yeah. And you were telling me before we actually started the recording that it's really difficult to go to Saudi Arabia if you don't have a working visa or if you're not a resident there. So yeah, that is a pretty amazing experience. And like you were telling us as well, like having this weekend to be able to go to some ruins that are similar to Petra is a pretty amazing experience that not a lot of people get to have.
Right. And hopefully that'll change within the next 5 or 10 years, because it really is a sight worth seeing. I would definitely say, after having been to Petra and seeing the Saudi side, it's definitely impressive.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting.
Do you think, like, if you told yourself like 10 years ago that you were going to be living in Saudi Arabia, what do you think that like older version of you would have thought? Or the younger version?
Yeah, it was like
the version of the past. So.
Yeah.
Past it.
Well, let's see. I probably would have laughed and been like, "No way. That's not gonna happen." Like, Saudi Arabia, man, come on. But saying that, had the 25-year-old version of me told the 15-year-old version of me that I'd be living in Japan, I would have had the same reaction. So, it's funny where life takes you.
Yeah, definitely.
So what is life like? Like, first of all, like in Oman, I know that from previous conversations you said like quite good things about it.
Yeah, Oman was beautiful. It's mountainous, not big mountains, but rocky, at least, which was a surprise. I remember what shocked me the most, because I thought going to Oman, I'm like, okay, I'm going to the Middle East. It's going to be straight desert. All I'm going to see is sand all around. It's going to be
Maybe
pretty cool.
Camel.
Yeah. Like I'll have my own camel, 4-wheel drive camel. Like, I didn't know what to expect. But the very first introduction to Oman, I was picked up from the airport by someone from the university. We get in his car. He's playing DMX, and we're driving through this rocky mountainous terrain, and I'm like, okay, this is not really what I expected. But it was a pleasant surprise.
Oh, that's great. It always surprises me the type of music that's playing in any type of like foreign vehicle, and I always wonder, is it like for the purpose of me being a tourist in this car, or is this actually what you listen to?
Right. And I was thinking the same thing. Like, I was thinking, did this guy look at my picture, see, okay, this is a black guy, let me get out my black guy playlist and put on DMX? Or does he really just listen to DMX regularly in his car? I wanted to ask him, I didn't know.
When we were in Malaysia a month ago, and we got into, I think it was an Uber.
Uber.
We got into an Uber, and like the guy, he's playing like, some sort of Chinese traditional music, like you picture someone listening to at like a temple. And then we get in the car, and he pulls out a USB stick and like sticks it in and turns that on, and LMFAO Party Rock comes on.
Of course.
And we're like, what is this, like the like white people playlist or something?
I was dying. I didn't want to laugh too loud.
Let me get on the party mix.
It's like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm like, it's too early for LMFAO. And it's 2016. They're not even cool anymore. It's like so 2008. But we were actually in a truck in Thailand yesterday, and we were riding in the back of it, and the driver was listening to Ice Ice Baby, and I'm pretty sure that was not for our sake because we could barely hear it. But like Ryan's like, listen to what he's playing.
Well, sometimes they just play random stuff.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
So from like a traveler perspective, I know that like people go to Turkey, people go, even like Iran has kind of a bit of awareness for travelers. Like, where are the spots in the Middle East that travelers don't go that you think are worth exploring?
Well, I'd say Iran for sure. Once things kind of settle down and relations get a little bit better, it's a beautiful country. From the images I've seen, and I was fortunate enough to work with some Iranian people in Oman, and some of the nicest people I've ever met. So I would love the chance to see that country and explore some parts of Iran. Pakistan as well, from some images I've seen. It looks like a beautiful country as well. I was just talking to a coworker today about this part of Libya called maybe Respite Magna or something along that lines, but it's the most well-preserved Roman ruins in the world, and it looks absolutely amazing. It's not quite the Middle East, but it's North Africa, it's regional. I think that would be something amazing to see as well.
Yeah, and then in terms of the places that you visited, what have been some of your like favorite experiences?
I think that's the toughest question you can ask a traveler. I get it all the time, and I think my answer probably changes every time I answer. But I'd say, okay, I'll give a winter example. So in the winter, I really enjoy visiting Christmas markets in Europe. It's just something about the atmosphere and the vibe and the gul wine, the warm spiced wine that you're drinking, people just out being merry. I like that whole vibe. My first introduction to that was last year in Annecy, France. And I would say of recent trips, that's one that has been really, I would say, made a real strong impression on me. The city itself, it's built on these canals. I rented out a loft that was right on the canal there, and they had the Christmas market going on. They had the local winter market going on, and then not far from the old town, there was Lake Annecy. So it was this real romantic feel. It's a real nice place.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
I know. So you've got quite a bit of Europe travel from Saudi Arabia. Where else have you been since you've been based out of there?
I've traveled since I've been here, mostly Europe and a few places in Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania.
Nice. Those are all on our list still.
And of course, throughout the Gulf, all over the Gulf, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, throughout this region.
Very cool. And can you tell us a little bit about what Saudi Arabia is like day to day?
Well, I mean, it's just like anywhere else. People wake up, they go to work, go home. The main difference is it is an Islamic state, so it really the culture really revolves around the religion. So when there's prayer time, shops will close. during that period. So you have to be mindful of that, be aware of that. And driving here is an adventure, I will say. So when you're on the road, you have to be aware at all times. Like when I go back home, I'm looking ahead and I'm focusing on the road in front of me. Occasionally peering to the side. I keep my peripheral vision on attention. But here, you're looking front, back, side to side, underneath, because you don't know where the next one's going to come from. So that's an adjustment, getting used to driving here. I would like to say it's made me a better driver, but it's probably made me a worse driver.
Have you been in an accident since you've been there?
Now, why you got to go jinxing me like that?
I was just curious. It was a crazy story.
Because I haven't. Really.
Knock on wood.
And
Really?
I'm hoping, yeah. And I'm hoping to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Best of luck.
Thank you.
So you brought up that you had been to Africa, and we know why that was. So you recently climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in the fall, right?
Yeah, for my birthday.
And that's part of like a bigger goal of climbing the tallest peaks on all 7 continents. Where did you first start thinking about taking that challenge on?
Well, just prior to climbing Kilimanjaro, because I've been wanting to climb Kilimanjaro for years. And being here, I really had no excuse for not doing it because it's in such close proximity to this region. And even in the past 2.5 years I've been here, I've just been putting it off. And leading up to that, I just started thinking, why stop there? Why not do the 7 tallest summits in the entire world? And I started to research them and find out, how many people have actually accomplished this goal, what it would take to accomplish this goal, and it's something that not many people have actually done. I believe it's less than 500 people in the history of the world have climbed all 7 peaks. A lot of people have died trying, but they went for it. But the people that were successful, I'd say it's less than 500. And I told myself that's a very attainable goal, especially after climbing Kilimanjaro. I felt like pushing through that I could, even though that's one of the easier peaks to climb on that list, but I still feel like pushing through that and getting over that hump has fueled me even more to the point where I feel like I can do it. But I also can't just keep saying I'm going to do it. So I've given myself a deadline of before I turn 40 to have done it. If it's going to happen, it's definitely going to have to happen before then. So working up to that, I want to climb at least 1 to 2 peaks within the next couple years, each year. And then once I start training for Denali and Everest, which will probably be the 2 hardest, then I'll just dedicate like a whole year, 2 years to training for those.
Wow, that's amazing. What are the 7 highest peaks? Can you just let listeners know?
Well, it's up for debate. It's actually debatable. Obviously Everest. There's Everest, and there's Kilimanjaro. Everest for Asia. Then there's Kilimanjaro for Africa. Those 2 are undisputed. For North America, it's Mount Denali. That's also undisputed. For South America, it's Aconcagua, which is also undisputed. And for Australia/Oceania, there's a debate whether it's Mount Kosciuszko and Mount Kosi in Australia or Karsten's Pyramid in Papua New Guinea, if you consider that part of Australia. Well, just for logistics' sake, I'm going with the Australian version because it's a whole lot easier to get there for me. Once I finish that, portion of the 7 summits. I might go back and do the Papua New Guinea one just so there's no debate. But I'll knock out one group first. And the same can be said for Europe, because it depends on how you define Europe. Some people see Mont Blanc in France as the tallest peak in Europe, whereas some people see Mount Elbrus in Russia as the tallest peak in Europe, depending on how you define Europe. And in that case, I'm going to do the same. I want to knock out both of those, though. I think both of those are pretty attainable.
Wow. And so how many years until you're 40?
Well, you can't have a man reveal. I mean, I feel so violated right now.
Sorry, but not sorry.
Well, my last name is Young. You asked me that earlier just to confirm, so I will forever be young. But I'll be 40 within the next 5 or 6 years or so. We'll just put it like that.
Okay. A man of mystery.
Yeah. Well, like he said in the intro, I have to maintain that reputation now.
Yeah, you got to keep that intrigue going. So yeah, what was the experience like at Kilimanjaro? What were the kind of the steps of completing that summit?
Oh man, there's a lot of walking every day. It's probably an average of about, I'd say it averaged out to about 6-7 hours trekking a day.
Wow.
And it was tough. You know, you go through 4 different climate zones on the way up. So you start out in the t-shirt, and by that last day, you are freezing in below zero temperatures. So it was just, you have to be mentally ready. You have to be physically ready. And you just have to have, by that last day, you just have to have the will to keep taking one step in front of the other.
Was there any moment along the way where you were kind of like, I don't know what I got myself into here?
Well, shoot, the very first night when I peed my pants in my tent, I was thinking, all right, I might not make it past day one. Yeah, there were moments. There were multiple moments. That was probably.
Do you want to tell that? Do you want to tell that story?
Well, you know, it's not really much to elaborate on peeing your pants, but basically, it was colder than I expected. The tent that I took with me is a very thin, not tent, the sleeping bag that I had with me is very thin. A lot of people just rent their sleeping bag when they get there. I carried mine because it was lightweight. And it's lightweight because it's thin. And I didn't anticipate it being cold the very first night, but it was. I was not adequately dressed inside my sleeping bag. And I was freezing. And they tell you to drink a lot of water when you're going up. So I had about 4 or 5 liters during that day's climb leading up to going to bed that night. And it came a point in the night where I woke up and I was like, ooh, I really gotta go. But I'm all zipped up in this tent and I'm warm and I'm all buckled into my sleeping bag and I don't want to get up. So I looked at my watch and I'm like, okay, it's 3 a.m. I can make it until 5 a.m. because that's when we're supposed to wake up. I'll just go back to sleep. So I go back to sleep and all of a sudden I'm dreaming and I feel really warm. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a little too warm. And I'm like, and I freak out because it was one of those, and I realized what was going on and I unzip and I jump out like, it's like I wasn't even asleep for like 30 minutes. It was like 3:30. I didn't stay out that much longer. And I'm basically running around camp naked, fanning. I threw my underwear like onto a tree, I'm fanning out my sleeping bag, and I went and hung it up on another tree, and then I'm just sitting there on the mat. Like it wasn't bad. Like it didn't go through like the tent. Like I wasn't like in a pool of pee, like swimming in the pee. It wasn't like that. But it was enough to get me up and moving. And at that point, I just had no sleeping bag, so I just put my coat on and I kind of fell asleep sitting up for that last hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
And from that point, I'm like, okay, I don't have a sleeping bag anymore. One of the pairs of pants that I planned on using during this hike are like peed in. And so like I was really feeling like, man, the odds are stacking up against me. But I cleaned off my bag, rinsed out my pants and air dried them and just kept it moving.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And how did it feel to like, first, like,
sleep,
what was it?
To sleep in a sleeping bag that I had peed in?
No. I was ready to move on. I was good. I was asking, how did it feel like hit the summit and get to like, okay, I made it.
Oh man, it felt good. Like it felt. I mean, I can't. It's no words really to describe it. It's the realization of something that you've been picturing in your mind, not just during that trip, but like leading up to that trip for the longest. You don't know what it's going to look like at the top. You don't know how you're going to feel at the top. You don't know what it's going to take on that journey up to the top. All you know is you're going to get to the top. And it was the culmination of knowing I was going to get to the top and realizing that. And for me, it's just satisfaction.
Yeah, that would be so amazing. I've never climbed anything like that, but I can just imagine after all of like the physical and mental like stuff that you would go through on a trek like that getting to that point would be like, holy shit, I did this.
Yeah, for sure.
How long was the trek in total? Like how long did it take you guys to get up and then down?
Well, it was 4 days up, 4.5 roughly, and then about a day and a half down. So it was 6 days total, 5-6 days total.
Wow.
Which is pretty much the fastest that they'll let you ascend.
Okay.
Yeah,
when you started, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's some people, like the route I took, there's some people that do it for 7 days, and then there are other routes that go for 8 days. So it just depends how you want to go up. But I felt like might as well just knock it out in the shortest amount of time. No sense torturing myself with extra days.
Right, like your feet and your legs are going to hurt regardless, so you might as well just like push through.
I'm going without a shower and without a proper bed. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible.
Right, yeah. I was going to ask, like, getting to the top of, like, any mountain for me is, like, I make it up there, and then I'm immediately like, can I just, like, zip line down, or can, like, a helicopter come pick me up? Because I, like, did this thing. I don't really want to walk back down. Did you have that at all?
Yeah, that was one of the things in the back of your mind. You're like, okay, I'm here. Now I got to go down. Oh, man. And going up that last night took about 7 hours. So I was just thinking, okay, how long is it going to take to get down?
Right.
But getting down wasn't that bad. It was basically like skiing in dirt, because it was like an incline. The dirt was very fine. It was very thick. And I went down. It was just me and a porter that went down. And they're used to going up and down that mountain multiple times a season. And he was like, can you go fast with me? And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And we ran down. Like, I took a couple of spills, a couple of falls, but shoot, to get down to high camp from the summit only took me a couple of hours.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and then like we camped overnight at high camp and went down to the gate that next morning. And again, I went down with some porters and we flew down. Like we flew down. They were like, "Yes, you are original African."
Oh, that's so great. What's next for you? Like, which of the climbs is the next one?
I've been putting a lot of thought into that actually, and the way it's looking, it probably is going to be Mont Blanc in France this summer. Right now, that's what it's looking like, and I'm considering also doing some training in the States, like maybe a winter course on Mount Whitney, or doing some climbing in Mount Rainier in Washington State, just in preparation.
Okay, yeah, cool.
But Mont Blanc will be next, and then probably Mont Kazi after that in Australia, depending on where I'm at in the world. Basically, that has a lot to do with it, where I'm at in the world, what's the closest place to get to, and also the season. Like to climb in France, the climbing season is summer, what we're used to for summer. To climb in South America or in Australia, the climbing center really is our winter, so that factors in as well.
Right. And then what's your like day-to-day training like in order to get yourself prepared for these big climbs?
Well, right now I'm just doing I'm just working out as normal. But I probably try to walk, I probably say about four. Right now I'm in off season, so I'll do probably like 4 times a week, maybe about 10K with a weighted vest on. I've got like a 40 kg vest that I wear when I'm walking, and I'll do that, and then I'll alternate between doing that outside and going on the treadmill and doing that on like the highest incline on the treadmill. Because I learned a lot from Kilimanjaro. What I learned is, because training before Kilimanjaro, I was doing a lot of walking with nothing on my back. So I learned that I need to train with something on my back. So I've got a weight vest back home, but I didn't have one here. So I ordered one of those 40 kg weight vests, and I've been training with that now, and also doing a lot more incline, because that's another thing that I learned. Like, I've been walking a lot of flat ground. I need to do more incline work.
Right. Wow. That's just amazing that you're doing that. I would love to say that that's something I'm going to do in my lifetime, but realistically, I don't think it is.
Has doing more climbing changed the way you think about travel and like trying to do more of like an adventure somewhere you're going, or isn't much changed in your perspective on that?
It's changed the way I think about travel a bit, in the sense that I want to include places where I feel like I can train, or places where I feel like I can get prepared to some extent for another climb. But at the same time, as a traveler, I still have places that I want to see in this world that have nothing to do with mountains. And sometimes you just want to kick back on a beach with an umbrella drink and look at the water.
Yeah, you're still human after all.
Yeah.
I'm sure you want that a lot too after doing something big like Kilimanjaro, and after you do the next couple hikes over the coming years. It's going to be like, or not even hikes, like treks. You probably want those breaks where you can like fully relax and allow your body to kind of like decompress from that.
For sure. You always want to celebrate like afterwards, or just even relax. A funny story about Kilimanjaro is that, like I said, I came down with the porters, and we flew. We were running down, and when we were not too far from the final gate, all of a sudden, like at that point we weren't really running. We were just walking fast, and all of a sudden this white guy walks past us, and like I was with like all the porters, they're like all African, And we looked at him and we're like, whoa. And I'm like, man, you're moving. And he's like, it turned out he was from Poland. He was like, yes, they said it was beer at the bottom, so I'm going for the beer. So he was motivated to celebrate as well.
One track mind. Oh, that's awesome. So we want to be mindful of your time, but we really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and tell us your stories and share with us a little bit what life on the road has been like for you over the last couple of years. If people want to find out more about you, where can they go to learn more about your adventures and life abroad?
Well, people can check out my site, rebornstronger.com, rebornstronger, all one word.com. Or they could check me out on Instagram at EG_III. It's because I'm EG, Edward G. Young the third. So at EG_III. Or Twitter at E3 Motivates. And it's the numeral 3. And it's the same for Facebook, for my Facebook page, facebook.com/E3 Motivates.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, and Eddie has a really good series on trekking Kilimanjaro on his site, so that's definitely worth going and checking out.
Yeah, I mean, I gave away the highlight of the first day, but there were 4 days after that.
Still suspense.
Yeah.
Keeping that mysterious alert.
All right, Eddie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, yeah, thanks for inviting me on the show. It was fun chatting and laughing with you guys.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.